Hello, everyone. My name is Kaylin. I'm going to be speaking to you today about diabetes management and athletic training. And I want to start with our learning outcomes. So, our learning outcomes for this are that you'll be able to describe diabetes management and athletic training, and then be able to apply diabetes management principles to different clinical scenarios. So, the first thing I want you to do is scan this QR code, and then I will pull up the word cloud here. Maybe. I don't know if I can move this from the top of my screen. I can. Perfect. And you will be able to see your word cloud in live time, real time, maybe. There we go. There is that QR code again if you need it. All right, so I'm seeing a lot of blood sugar, hypoglycemia, ketoacidosis. These are all really good things. Care plans are fantastic. I feel like they're overlooked quite frequently. Juice, high low, crashes. Crashing with diabetes is always an interesting time. So I appreciate everybody's thoughts on that. It looks like everybody has responded at this point. So we will move back to our next slide. So from here, we are going to move into the different principles of diabetes management, and that includes nutritional management, glucose regulation, having a diabetes care plan, having different supplies for your med kit, and some travel recommendations. We're going to go into each of these in some more detail. So next is nutritional management. Nutritional management for diabetes can be a pretty complex process, and the physician is typically involved in this, and they typically have an endocrinologist and a family medicine physician that is both helping manage this care. So most people recommend carbohydrates before activity because typically activity can decrease your blood sugar. Sometimes there are odd cases where it actually increases your blood glucose level, but not very often. And then I have some different dietary recommendations, and the big ones that are different are the 7 to 10 grams per kilogram per day of carbs. So if somebody is 220 pounds, you convert that to kilograms, and that is 2.2 kilograms per pound. So you'll multiply that number by divide that number by 2.2, and you will get how many kilograms they are, and it is dosed based off of that. Same thing with protein. For your average person, it is 0.8 to 1.2 grams per kilogram per day. However, in diabetics, it is actually 1.2 to 1.7 grams per kilogram per day, and approximately 25 to 35% of their daily calories should be lipids. That's pretty typical in your everyday population, though, so that's not very different. Next, I want to talk about glucose management. And that includes your CGMs or having a finger stick, depending on what your patient has available. Do they have an insulin pump? Do they have a Dexcom? Do they have your just standard glucometer? It all depends on what that patient has available to them. And then their insulin recommendations are typically made by their endocrinologist. Does anybody have any questions so far before I go into normal glucose levels? No? All right. So moving into normal glucose levels. I have them listed on the screen, but just for some more clarification, for your normal everyday person, your normal blood glucose level before eating is 60 to 100 milligrams per deciliter. Now, that can vary by person, but there is that 40 milligrams per deciliter range. For a diabetic, it is different. So before a meal, they should be between 80 and 130 milligrams per deciliter. And then 2 hours after a meal, they should still be under 180 milligrams per deciliter. Typically, while you'll see somebody eat, once they have it well managed, they'll know how much insulin to dose, and they will give themselves that many units of insulin that they need. And then on the flip side of that, low blood sugar is considered less than 70 milligrams per deciliter. At that point, they need to get some form of glucose in their system, whether that be glucagon, juice, Smarties, Reese's, etc. And then hyperglycemia is defined as over 180 milligrams per deciliter, because that is where you start getting into ketoacidosis if it's left untreated. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Well, now I'm going to move on to the diabetes care plan. So as you can see in this image that I have in this corner right here, there are a lot of different components to the diabetes care plan: lists of meds, guidelines for hyper and hypoglycemia, emergency contact, blood glucose monitoring guidelines, and different therapy guidelines for what do you do if they're high or if they're low, or what is going on. Next you ask is, well, who needs one? In theory, any patient that is going to be participating in any form of athletic activity should have one, especially if you are going and you're in a setting like I am, where I don't travel with the teams that I work with because it's not feasible for me. I have too many other home events, so I cannot travel. So in reality, not every patient that has diabetes has a diabetes care plan, but the NATA has made it very clear that every patient should have a diabetes care plan. So if at all possible, I highly recommend it. Kind of moving now into supplies for your med kit. These are just some supplies. I'm sure there are others that you can think of. If anybody has any other suggestions, feel free to let me know about those. But I have some glucose tabs, a glucometer if you have access to one, juice, Smarties, granola bars. Their diabetes care plan should definitely be in there if they have one, batteries, and a Sharps container if they are dosing insulin themselves at the games, practices, whatever setting you're in. I guess it could be at work if you're in the industrial setting. Does anybody have any questions so far? Or any comments, concerns, frustrations?
I was just going to say I was asked to carry tube frosting because the individual, when they got to about 55, would be semi-conscious and we couldn't feed them, but we could put that in the side of their mouth and it would still be absorbed and they'd pop right back up.
That's a good point, Jack. I'd never thought of that one.
I had neither. That was not me. That was the physician.
That one sounds the most enjoyable, in my opinion.
Wait, what was it?
Tube frosting.
I'm too what?
Tube frosting.
Tube frosting. Okay.
Yeah, if you're gonna like take sugar cookies and decorate them with,
Yeah. That's smart. Yeah, that's cool.
Just put them right, just like you're having a chew. Put it right between your lip and your gums, and you got it.
Wow, that's really smart. All right. Moving to travel recommendations now. I have some different recommendations that I found for different travel situations. Most patients travel with some insulin with them, especially if you're traveling for long periods of time. Now, if you're traveling to a game that is a half hour away, it's going to be an hour basketball game, and they're leaving at the end of the hour basketball game, they may not actually have insulin with them. A lot of times, though, if they are minors, their parents will go to the game and have insulin with them at that point. And then as far as snacks go, we've kind of been through a lot of snacks that you could bring with you. This is really important, though, when you're going across time zones in particular. So if you are IU and you are playing at UCLA, because that's in the conference now, and you're crossing 3 different time zones to go play a football game, soccer game, volleyball game, etc. It could be really important to have those snacks and prepackaged meals because, yes, should they have some on the flight? They could. They should. If it's over a 5-hour flight, you typically get an in-flight meal, but there's not always that. So that's also something to keep in mind. Also, in case you get stuck there and you stuck in the airport, your flight gets delayed, your flight gets canceled, etc. On that same note of travel, TSA restrictions can be interesting, especially when you're trying to travel with vials of insulin because they can be over that 3.3 ounce limit. However, if they have a note from a physician stating they need it, all they have to do is go up to the TSA agent, say, I have this medicine, I have this prescription, I have to have this. They will verify the prescription, the medication, and they will be good to go with it. And then obviously, as with everything, you need to consult with a diabetes care team. Make sure you're actually doing that interprofessional collaborative practice. Everybody needs to be on the same page when you're traveling. Yourself, the endocrinologist, the family physician, the team physician, etc. And now I kind of want to move into some patient cases. I do want most people to contribute to each one. I have kept them pretty vague to allow everybody to contribute their own thoughts. And we will kind of go through these and 2 other ones as well. And then we will be done. So this first case is a 13-year-old male patient, walks over to you and says he's feeling low in the middle of his basketball practice. He checks his CGM and it says that his blood glucose level is 60 milligrams per deciliter. What do you do next?
Ask him what he had for lunch and if he's had a snack before practice.
Yes, because when you work with 13-year-olds, sometimes they just don't eat. Even if they know they're supposed to, they just don't eat. Does anybody else have any suggestions?
Drink Gatorade.
Yeah, or just get like some kind of like sugar in them.
All good ideas. Haven, anything to add?
I mean, at that point, if you've already given them something, just continue to monitor. Just make sure they're not going to decline even worse.
Yeah, so once you give them that initial blood sugar raising thing, whether that be juice, snacks, etc., you want to wait 15 minutes and then recheck and see if it increases. Once it increases, you want to give them a long-acting carb. If it doesn't increase, you give them 15 more grams of carbs, wait another 15 minutes, and then if it's still not there, then that is when, if they're unconscious at that point, hopefully they're not, but that's when typically, if I work with minors, that's when I typically get the parent involved. But that's when it becomes more of a serious situation at that point. Also, another thing, especially if they're wearing a CGM, their batteries could be low. So I'd also have them recheck with a finger stick. Most people do have both, with them at all times, but they try not to use a finger stick because who likes poking themselves in the finger with a needle? All right, moving to the next patient case. This is more geared towards the collegiate realm. So you have a 20-year-old female patient that presents with a blood sugar level of 190 milligrams per deciliter. And the patient reported that she ate 15 grams of carbs before softball practice and she's starting to feel high. What do you do next?
Is she on a pump for insulin? And could it have become detached?
Yes, let's say she was wearing a Dexcom that had the insulin pump built in, but she's still at that 190 milligram level.
Did she change the cartridge?
That's
I mean,
that's where I was trying to go, actually.
yeah,
Change
okay.
the cartridge, change batteries, etc. Haven, Warren, Adam, anything to add?
I mean, she needs insulin, so
Yeah.
give her insulin.
Yeah, she can still participate as long as it's as long as she doesn't have ketone, so do a urinalysis if you want, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you have the ability to do a urinalysis, that's awesome. It really depends on what level of collegiate sports you're at. D1, you probably have a way to do that, or at least you have a higher likelihood of that. At a D3 college, you also probably don't. So
We had them at Anderson. We had dipsticks.
do we have them for ketones though?
I want to say we did. I want to say we did.
Huh.
The 10 strip has ketones on it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we had the strips at Anderson, and that is like one of the most poor D3s I know.
I mean, you're not wrong. So that would be the next step. Also, administering insulin also depends on your standing orders, state laws regarding administering prescriptions, etc. Indiana, we can administer them, we can't prescribe them. It just has to be in our standing orders that we can administer them. I don't administer anything that's not an EpiPen or an inhaler because of institutional policies, but I also work with minors. All right, last case as we are finishing up here, because we have 1 minute left. You have a 12-year-old female patient who was recently diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and is wondering how that works with participating in school and all-star cheer. Who do you notify? What education do you give her and her parents? And what do you make sure you have in your kit? And I'm going to have one person answer this one.
I would bring in the coach and probably the school nurse who's got supplies and things that we don't necessarily have. And maybe even some other kind of educator sitting us all down together with the patient and discuss all of these things, because it just coming from us, we might get lost in translation and other people can help support and be on board. Coach needs to be in the meeting too, the coaching staff.
Yeah, that is a great point, Jan. Unless anybody has any questions, I think that is all we have for today. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we will do the quiz.